Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing quite possibly my favorite book of all time, and that is Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. Now, before I get into this, I've tried to I've tried to shoot this video several times, and I find myself meandering around, not being able to talk about this book in a succinct way because it is so um, difficult to describe. Uh, I think of the reviews I've watched, of the articles I've consumed, just I wanted to know what other people thought about this book after finishing it, and I brushed up this morning on my research of this book a little bit. Uh, I think this is one of the most challenging, yet one of the most satisfying books I've ever read. Usually, those two things don't quite go together because challenging books, unless they pay off at the end, are frustrating and not enjoyable, and you know, if they don't, like I said, if they don't pay off with what you're challenged by, and you don't get some kind of resolution, or at least understanding at the end, you just get angry. And it's quite the opposite with Sirens of Titan, because I was laughing, I was crying, I was smiling throughout the reading experience of this book. And I read Slaughterhouse-Five not that long ago and reviewed it on the channel. That was my second Vonnegut. This was actually the first Vonnegut I've ever read. And just like in that video where I just couldn't help but talk about Vonnegut, I won't spend a lot of this video doing that, because you can go over and check that video out if you want to learn more about Vonnegut himself, because that book was much more autobiographical in a sense than this is. But Vonnegut is so fun. It's so much fun to read that I think if he doesn't match your flavor, I feel bad for you, because um, the kind of writing that I seek out is, you couldn't find a more enjoyable writer, at least for my tastes. I'm in no way saying that he should be your favorite writer, but I have, as you can see, several more stories to read by him, that I'm eager to get to, but also tempering, because I know that his writing style is so much fun for me to read that I'm trying not to just fly through all of his books and then look around and go, oh well, there's no more to read. I want to savor his writings because they're so much fun, and so they have that payoff for the challenge at the end. And that's not to say that Vonnegut ties everything up in a nice bow in this book. In fact, I think he poses more questions by the end than he actually answers. But we essentially are exploring free will and what is the meaning of life in this book. And I think Vonnegut, while he, as far as I know, was not a believer, had a lot of questions and ponderings about religion and of the existence of God and the existence of meaning in that sort of, um, in that questioning. And he explores it so well in this book that I think if you're a Christian, which I am, uh, you'll get a lot out of this. If you're not a Christian, you'll get a lot out of this, because I think it breaks down the barriers of some of the religious division that we have um, in modern day. Uh, I think if you can just try to look at this from the point of view that Kurt Vonnegut was a human being, we are all human beings. We experience a lot of the same um, questions, and we ask a lot of the same questions, and we seek a lot of the same things. You know, I just he has such a fun, and I've said fun a lot, but the reading experience is just so joyful in his writing. It's like if you enjoy dark humor, not the darkest of humor, but dark humor, where he's that kind of stuff is in here all the time, and he's so clever and witty that, like, sometimes the joke went over my head and I'd realize it later. Um, and I'm sure there's stuff on my first read through that I didn't pick up on, but um, the plot is so odd, and it's linear, but it's kind of not linear, and it's the characters are so quirky and most of the time and likable that you just find yourself just pulled in so well by his writing. And so um, that's a lot of just word salad for me to tell you that this book's great and it explores some really universal themes. Um, and I feel like I can't do this book justice, truthfully, by trying to unpack how I felt about it, because it's more a feeling internally than it is something that I can express verbally. Uh, you follow this character named Malachi Constant, who goes on this series of adventures, we'll call them, purely by, I would say, circumstance, but he is at the mercy of the circumstance. And so, um, without spoiling anything, at least at this point in the video, uh, we see him go from Earth to Mars to then Titan to but we also have this storyline of a man named Rumford, who is the richest man in North America, builds his own spacecraft and goes to he and his dog Kazakh get lost in like a quantum time warp, and they essentially like trigger a series of events that starts that like that trigger things that happen in this book. And we see the recurrence of the Tralfamadorians from Slaughterhouse-Five, who I guess this was published before Slaughterhouse-Five, maybe. Let's see. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to tell. This is 59. Um, Regardless, some recurring characters or races in this book, and it's all pieced together in such a quirky way where you kind of don't know exactly what's going on at all times. But if you try to just sit back and let Vonnegut take the wheel and direct you, be your tour guide through this story, don't try too hard, and you'll have such a blast with this book. Um, I know some people get a little bit frustrated at the seemingly confusing plot, but I didn't think it was really that hard to follow. I did find myself wondering at least what the purpose of some of the events were, but in my opinion, you get some of those bigger questions answered by the end, at least the ones that you want to that you feel you deserve at least an answer to. And so at this point, I will stop for spoilers. So if you don't want any specific info about the end, because that's what I'd like to talk about, stop it here and please read this book. If you just give it a chance, you will. I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's a perfect book in my opinion. I wouldn't change a thing about this book. And it's probably a personal taste rather than the perfection of the book, but if you go on and look at the reviews that are online by people who have read this, it's an overwhelming positive. And I think a lot of people feel similarly to me, at least, in the sense that this is such a special writing piece of writing that it deserves at least a try. So that was spoilers. I'm going to talk about more of the specifics, at least at the end. Um, so uh, Malachi Constant and Rumford's actually ex-wife have a child named Chrono, and I remember the portions of them on Mars where Chrono is kind of like this difficult child, um, being interesting to read about, and then the being a new dad when I read this, I just couldn't help but kind of insert myself into the position of Malachi and see a grown-up version of my son being an ornery little guy, and so that was charming, at least to me. And when we see at the very end, the three of them arrive on Titan, and um, they meet. Is it Salo? Yeah, Salo, the Tralfamadorian like robot, and then they meet Rumford on Titan. Anyway, the ending, I was bawling at the ending. I don't really know why. I think there was some other stuff going on in my personal life that this book helped me kind of just release. emotionally, but I was bawling at the end and laughing at the same time. It was that happy cry that is such a rarity in your life that you wish you could hold on to that moment. That was the ending of this book, because when it put when it all fit together, I'm like kind of like getting a little welled up just thinking about it. When it all fit together, that Chrono had the little piece that Salo needed to essentially fix his spaceship and get the message from the Tralfalmadorians, I, I couldn't help but just be like, Vonnegut, you son of a gun! Like, I'm getting teared up because it is such a funny and emotional payoff to me. Because you go through these crazy events with some painful situations and some despair from Constant, and from Malachi Constant, from his wife, from Chrono. So you feel bad for the robot Salo. Uh, like, it all makes sense at the end, and it's all just like, it's a silly period at the end that says, to me at least, it says, yeah, this all might not have any point to it, but why would you live your life as such? There's got to be, we create the meaning for our lives, essentially, is I think what he's trying to get across is, you can live your life in a hole of, you know, feeling depressed about everything because you don't know for certain that there's a meaning of life. You can live like that. It's a miserable existence. And I think he's trying to get across that, like, we won't know until we know. So let's make the best of it. Um and it as a believer, it posed these questions of predestination and free will to me in a really unique manner that I think, as I said, if you're a science fiction fan and a believer in God, in Jesus, I think that this is worth your time to read, simply for the fact of the questions that I think Vonnegut was trying to ask. Um, it just went so deep, and it is a beautiful book. I don't really feel like I told you a whole lot. So if you're at this point in the video, I've probably been talking for 10, 15 minutes, and I don't think I've actually said really much of substance, but I um, I wanted to try to give some honest thoughts and raw emotion to the way this book made me feel, because there are other books I've reviewed on the channel, such as Childhood's End or Blood Music, and some really great books that I've really been overjoyed to have read. But the analyzation of those books is so much different for me, because they don't make me feel the things that Vonnegut makes me feel. And I've always said that, like, um, J.R.R. Tolkien was my favorite writer because The Hobbit was the foundational work of literature that made me into a reader. When I read it as a kid, when my parents and me, watched Lord of the Rings and read those books, and I just it awoke something inside of me that just loves these stories, these fictional tales. It's purely um, that childlike wonder, and I don't often read stories that awaken that childlike wonder in me again. And this book, like, I'm speechless trying to come up with a good way to talk about it. Like I said, I think I've just kind of rambled, but I think that speaks to the power of this book. Um, yeah, I could ramble more, but I think I'll end it there and just let you experience it for yourself, because it is well worth your time. I gave this book to my brother, and I'm really hoping that he reads it. He's a busy dude. He's got a lot going on in his life as well, so it's not super easy to pick up a book like this in the midst of a busy time in life. But I remember doing it in one of the darker places in the last couple years for me, and it was really a piece in my life. Like I said, you know what I'm talking about when it's that cry laughing uh, and not because you're laughing so hard there's tears. I mean something in you that is emotion, that you've been pent up emotion that you've been dealing with comes out in the form of laughter and of sadness at the same time. And that is one of those things, you like I said, you wish you could be in that moment for a long time because it's so freeing. Vonnegut probably is my favorite writer, and I've read 2 books of his. But J.R.R. Tolkien only wrote a few books too, and I've been saying he's my favorite writer for years. So I do feel that I can finally say that after reading a couple books of his, that I just have never been moved by a book like this or like Slaughterhouse-Five. Vonnegut is and was um, one of the greatest writers of all time, and I will stand by that. He's awesome. And if to that question that many people ask, who would you have dinner with, uh, alive or dead, anybody in history? I think at this point, a cop out answer would be Jesus, being a believer. But I know I'll see Jesus someday, so why not Kurt Vonnegut? I'd love to talk to him. I wish I could. Um, he seems he seems in a lot of his interviews like such a genuine and good person that I think his personality comes through in his books like nobody else I've ever read. So I will stop there. I have to stop because otherwise this video is going to get too long. But um, it's a perfect 10 out of 10 book. I couldn't recommend it enough. I hope that this doesn't seem like a lot of the books that I'm reading. I love this book. Oh, I love this book. Oh, I love this book. Because then I think it cheapens the actually legendary works if you just say you love all the books. So I'm trying to do a good job of reading things and reviewing things with a critical eye and not being just overjoyed by everything. Um, but truly, I can't speak highly enough of this book, and I hope you read it. That'll do it for this video. I really appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If you've subscribed, if you've commented, it means the world to me because when I do reviews like this, especially, I just have so much fun going back through and thinking about these wonderful books that I've read. So yeah, I'll end it there, and I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourself.